At my nephew's party, my sister announced, "My son is your husband's child, so as inheritance, I'll take half of your $800,000 house," and showed his will. I could barely hold back my laughter because what Cassandra didn't know would destroy her entire scheme. My name is Bridget, and at 34, I never expected to become a widow. 3 months ago, I lost Adam, my husband of 11 years, to a sudden brain aneurysm. Just days after his funeral, I found myself at my nephew Lucas's first birthday party, where my sister Cassandra decided to drop this bombshell in front of our entire family. As I stood there listening to her claim that she'd had an affair with Adam 2 years ago, I felt that inappropriate urge to laugh bubbling up inside me. Not because anything was funny, but because her elaborate lie was so impossibly wrong that it became almost comical. The forged will she waved around looked amateurish at best, and her story had more holes than Swiss cheese. But here's what made her scheme truly laughable. Adam had undergone a vasectomy 2 years before Lucas was even conceived. It was medically impossible for him to be the father, and that wasn't the only evidence I had waiting in our safety deposit box. You see, my husband wasn't just thoughtful and loving, he was a brilliant corporate attorney with an obsessive attention to detail, and Cassandra's inappropriate behavior toward him hadn't gone unnoticed or undocumented. It started 3 years ago during what should have been a pleasant family dinner. I'd stepped out to take a client call about a design emergency. I run my own successful interior design firm. When I returned 20 minutes later, the atmosphere had completely changed. Adam looked deeply uncomfortable, and Cassandra was sitting much closer to him than when I'd left, her hand on his arm. That night, Adam told me everything. While I was on the phone, Cassandra had made her move. "She said you were lucky to have me," Adam explained, then suggested I deserved someone who could truly appreciate me. When I shut her down, she laughed it off as a joke. But it wasn't a joke, and it wasn't a one-time incident. Over the following months, Cassandra found ways to touch Adam whenever she thought I wasn't looking. She sent him text messages that walked the line between friendly and flirtatious. She even showed up at his law firm unannounced, asking him to lunch. Adam handled each incident with professional grace, gently but firmly maintaining boundaries while documenting everything. After she appeared at his office, we finally confronted my parents about her behavior. That conversation went exactly as you'd expect. They insisted we were misinterpreting her friendly gestures and suggested Adam might be exaggerating because he was flattered by the attention. That's when Adam made a decision that would prove prophetic. "Cassandra isn't done," he told me as we sat in our Boston garden. "I have a feeling she might try something more drastic one day." The next week, Adam scheduled an appointment with our family attorney, James Wilson. I accompanied him as he detailed Cassandra's behavior pattern and something else, his recent medical situation. Adam had been experiencing pain for weeks before finally seeing a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele requiring surgery. During the procedure, complications arose, and the doctor recommended a vasectomy to prevent recurrence. Given our past fertility struggles, we'd endured 4 failed rounds of IVF. We agreed it was the right choice for Adam's health. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before Lucas was conceived. We kept this information completely private. After years of invasive questions about our childless status, we'd learned to protect our reproductive privacy. Only Adam, myself, and his doctors knew. James Wilson listened to everything with the measured attention of an experienced attorney. "Document everything," he advised. "The unwanted advances, the medical records, text messages, emails. You never know what might become relevant. Better to have documentation and never need it than wish you had it later." We followed his advice meticulously. Adam updated his will properly through official channels, ensuring everything would come to me. We created a comprehensive file containing his legitimate will, medical records confirming the vasectomy, a detailed journal documenting every inappropriate interaction with dates and exact quotes, printed copies of her suggestive text messages, and a letter from James confirming his witness of Adam's actual will. All originals went into our safety deposit box at the bank. "Just in case," Adam said with a slight smile, "though I plan to be around to deal with Cassandra's drama for at least another 50 years. The morning after Lucas's birthday party, I drove straight to the bank. The manager, who'd known Adam and me for years, expressed his condolences as he led me to the vault. Inside our box was everything I needed, plus something I hadn't expected. At the bottom lay a sealed envelope with my name in Adam's familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened his final gift. "My dearest Bridget, if you're reading this, something has happened to me, and you've needed to access these documents. I hope it's many years from now when we're old and gray, and Cassandra's antics are nothing but a distant memory. But if not, if the worst has happened and she's tried to hurt you in my absence, please know that I prepared for every possibility. Use these documents to protect yourself. You deserve to be protected from those who would take advantage of that beautiful heart of yours. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Adam." I gathered the medical records, legitimate will, and selected journal entries, then called James Wilson for an emergency appointment. James's law office occupied a converted brownstone that exuded old money and discretion. His receptionist recognized me immediately, her expression softening with sympathy before ushering me to his office. "This is amateurish forgery," James said after examining Cassandra's fake will. "The legal language is completely wrong, nothing like proper estate documents. The signature, while similar, would never withstand expert analysis. But the fact that she created this at all is deeply troubling." I showed him Adam's documentation. He reviewed everything methodically: the medical records, legitimate will, and Adam's detailed journal of Cassandra's behavior. "These medical records alone disprove her paternity claim," James observed. "The vasectomy was performed 2 years before the child was conceived. It's biologically impossible for Adam to be the father." "What should I do?" I asked. "I don't want to humiliate her publicly, but I can't let her steal half my home based on lies." James leaned back thoughtfully. "First, we need more information. I recommend hiring a private investigator to examine Cassandra's current situation. People rarely attempt fraud of this magnitude without serious financial pressure." He recommended Frank Delaney, a former Boston police detective, who now worked as a private investigator for the firm. Frank arrived within the hour, a stocky man with a thick Boston accent and no-nonsense attitude. Frank took detailed notes as I explained the situation, asking pointed questions about Cassandra's employment, relationships, and financial status. I realized how little I actually knew about my sister's current circumstances. "I'll need a few days," Frank said. "I'll focus on her financial situation and relationship with the child's actual father." I shared what little I knew about Tyler, the bartender Cassandra had been dating when she became pregnant. I'd only met him a handful of times, and he'd seemed uninterested in family gatherings. He hadn't even attended Lucas's birthday party, which struck me as strange for the supposed father. 3 days later, Frank called requesting another meeting at James's office. When I arrived, both men were reviewing documents spread across the conference table. "Mrs. Preston," Frank began, "I've uncovered some very concerning information about your sister's situation." According to his investigation, Cassandra was in desperate financial straits. She'd accumulated over $75,000 in debt across credit cards, personal loans, and medical bills for Lucas, who'd needed heart surgery shortly after birth. Her credit score was abysmal, and she'd been rejected for 3 additional loans in the past month. "She's also facing eviction," Frank continued, sliding a document across the table. "This is a copy of the notice her landlord filed last week. She has until month's end to pay 4 months of back rent or vacate." As for Tyler, he'd apparently abandoned Cassandra and Lucas shortly after the birth, moving to Seattle with a new girlfriend. He was paying minimal child support, barely $200 monthly, and even that irregularly. I also found these, Frank said, producing printouts of text messages between Cassandra and her friend Jenna, the woman who'd answered the door at the party. The messages were damning. Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. That house is worth at least $800K now. If I play this right, I'll have a nice nest egg for Lucas and me. The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop and found a sample of Adam's signature online from some charity auction. It looks totally legit. Bridget has always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share. She got 11 years with a great guy. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone. I felt physically ill reading the calculated coldness of my sister's words. This wasn't desperate opportunism. It was premeditated fraud designed to capitalize on my grief. There's more, Frank said gently. I ran a background check on Tyler Martin, the actual father. He has a history of domestic violence charges and currently has a warrant for unpaid child support for another child in New Hampshire. I sat in stunned silence. My sister wasn't just desperate. She was willing to destroy Adam's reputation and our marriage's memory to solve her financial problems. What do I do with all this? I asked. I can't just expose everything publicly. Lucas is innocent and he's still my nephew. James removed his glasses, considering carefully. You have several options, Bridget. We could file criminal charges for attempted fraud and forgery. That would likely result in jail time given the money involved. Or we could handle this privately, confront her with evidence, require her to retract her claims, and work out an arrangement that protects both you and the child. After much reflection and an emergency therapy session with Dr. Rebecca Hayes, my grief counselor, I decided on a course of action. I would confront Cassandra privately with all the evidence, offering her a choice: face potential legal consequences for her fraud, or accept a compromise that would provide for Lucas while requiring accountability from her. I called Cassandra the next morning. "We need to talk about the will," I said when she answered. "Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon? Just you, no Lucas." "I knew you'd come around," she replied, sounding smugly satisfied. "I'll be there at 2. I spent the morning preparing meticulously. Following James's advice, I arranged documents in logical order and set up recording equipment. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, so I'd need her permission to record, but I could frame it as ensuring we both had a record of any agreement. At precisely 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. I steadied myself before opening the door. Cassandra stood on my porch looking polished in a new outfit, her confidence evident in every line of her posture. I led her to my living room where I'd arranged 2 chairs facing each other, a coffee table between them holding a recorder, water glasses, and a folder of documents. "I hope you don't mind if we record our conversation," I said. "It seems prudent given the legal nature of what we're discussing." Cassandra hesitated briefly before nodding. "Sure, whatever makes you comfortable, though I think this should be pretty straightforward. The will is clear." I turned on the recorder, stated the date and time, and confirmed Cassandra's consent. Then I sat back, studying my sister's face. "Before we discuss the will, I'd like to understand exactly what you're claiming happened between you and Adam." Cassandra launched into a well-rehearsed story about a supposed affair 2 years ago. According to her version, she and Adam had connected during a period when he and I were having marital problems. She claimed they met several times at a hotel downtown, that Adam had confessed his unhappiness in our marriage, and that Lucas was conceived during these encounters. "He always meant to tell you," she said, her eyes wide with practiced sincerity. "But then Lucas was born with the heart condition, and he didn't want to add stress to the situation. He promised he'd provide for his son, though." I listened without interrupting, noting inconsistencies in her timeline and details that contradicted what I knew about Adam's schedule during that period. When she finished, I began asking specific questions. Which hotel did you meet at? The Mandarin Oriental, she replied quickly. What room number? She faltered slightly. It was on a high floor. I don't recall the exact number. What days of the week did you usually meet? Tuesdays? Sometimes Thursdays when he told you he was working late. I continued with increasingly specific questions about details only someone who'd actually been intimate with Adam would know. Cassandra grew increasingly flustered, her answers becoming vague or contradictory. Why does any of this matter? She finally snapped. The point is that Lucas is Adam's son, and the will proves Adam wanted to provide for him. Actually, I said calmly, opening my folder, both of those claims are demonstrably false. I placed the medical records on the table between us. 2 years before Lucas was conceived, Adam had a vasectomy following surgery for a varicocele. It was completely successful, confirmed by follow-up tests. It was physically impossible for him to father a child after that procedure. Cassandra's face drained of color. She picked up the medical records with trembling hands, scanning the clinical language and dates. These could be faked, she said weakly. They're not, I replied, and Adam's doctor is prepared to testify to their authenticity if necessary, but that's just the beginning. Next, I produced the legitimate will, notarized and properly filed with the court. This is Adam's actual will, prepared by James Wilson and witnessed by 2 partners at his firm. As you can see, it leaves everything to me with no mention of Lucas. Cassandra's confidence visibly crumbled, but she attempted to rally. He must have changed it after this was drawn up. The will I have is more recent. The will you have, I said evenly, is a forgery, a poor one, I might add. James has already identified multiple legal inconsistencies in the language, and the signature is clearly fake. Creating fraudulent wills is a felony in Massachusetts, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. I continued, methodically presenting evidence. Adam's journal documenting her inappropriate advances, the text messages between her and Jenna discussing the plan, and finally Frank's investigation report detailing her financial troubles, eviction notice, and Tyler's abandonment. We know everything, Cassandra, I said as she sat in stunned silence. The question now is what happens next. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry. Not the theatrical tears I'd seen her use to manipulate our parents, but deep, body-racking sobs. I didn't know what else to do, she finally said between gasps. I'm going to be homeless. Lucas and I will be out on the street in 2 weeks. Tyler left us with nothing. The medical bills just keep coming. I thought if I could just get some money from the house. So you decided to destroy Adam's reputation? I asked, my voice hardening. To tell everyone he cheated on me? To forge legal documents? I was desperate, she shouted, her sadness turning to anger. You have everything, this big house, a successful business, everyone's respect. What do I have? A baby with a heart condition, $75,000 in debt, and an eviction notice. You try making good decisions in that situation. Her outburst hung in the air between us. The raw honesty of it, stripped of manipulation and lies, reached something in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. Lucas is Tyler's son, isn't he? I asked more gently. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes, Adam never touched me. Not like that. I did try with him years ago. He always shut me down immediately. He was annoyingly loyal to you. And the will? My friend Dave helped me create it. He does graphic design and thought it would be easy to fake a signature. I was going to use it to pressure you into giving me money. I never thought you'd actually investigate so thoroughly. I turned off the recorder and sat back, considering my next move. Cassandra watched nervously, clearly expecting the worst. I could press charges, I said finally. What you did was illegal, not to mention cruel and calculated. She nodded miserably. But that would hurt Lucas, I continued, and despite everything, he's my nephew. I love him." I leaned forward, making sure she was looking directly at me. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell everyone the truth, that you lied about the affair, that Lucas isn't Adam's son, and that you forged the will. You'll apologize publicly to me and to Adam's memory." "And then," she asked, her voice small, "we'll still be evicted." "I'm not finished," I said. "In exchange for your full confession and a legal agreement never to attempt anything like this again, I'll help you and Lucas, not by giving you half my house, but by setting up a trust fund for Lucas's education and medical needs and helping you find stable housing." Her eyes widened. "Why would you do that after what I did?" "Not for you," I said honestly. "For Lucas. And because Adam would want me to help his nephew, even if that nephew's mother tried to destroy his reputation. There will be conditions," I continued. "You'll enter therapy and financial counseling. You'll maintain steady employment, and you'll allow me to be part of Lucas's life to ensure he's being properly cared for. If you violate any of these conditions, the support stops immediately." After further discussion of details, Cassandra agreed to my terms. We would meet with James the next day to formalize the agreement, and she would make her public confession at a family dinner the following weekend. The family dinner was tense from the start. My parents arrived early, my mother bringing her signature lasagna as a peace offering. By 7 p.m., we were all seated around my dining room table with a recorder in the center. "I have asked Cassandra to share some important information with you," I began. My sister looked pale and uncomfortable as she spoke. "I lied about Lucas being Adam's son," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Adam and I never had an affair. Lucas is Tyler's child, and I forged the will I showed at the birthday party." My parents stared at her in shock. As Cassandra explained her desperate financial situation, I watched my mother's expression shift from shock to sympathy. "Oh, honey," my mother said when Cassandra finished, "why didn't you just come to us for help? You didn't need to make up such terrible lies." "Would you have given me $400,000? Cassandra asked bluntly. "Because that's what I would have gotten if my plan had worked. Half the value of Bridget's house." The remainder of the dinner was subdued as my parents processed this new reality. When they left, my father hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm proud of you, Bridget. Adam would be too." 1 year later, I stood in our garden watching the daffodils Adam had planted the previous fall bloom in brilliant yellow against the newly green lawn. So much had changed. The trust fund for Lucas was established and helping with his ongoing medical needs. His heart condition was responding well to treatment, and he was growing into a cheerful, curious toddler. Cassandra had surprised everyone by truly embracing our agreement's conditions. 6 months of therapy had helped her recognize destructive behavior patterns, and she'd found steady employment as an office manager at a dental practice. Our relationship remained formal but cordial. I saw Lucas regularly, taking him on outings to the park and children's museum. Cassandra and I didn't pretend to be close, but we'd found a way to coexist peacefully for Lucas's sake. I'd also established the Adam Preston Foundation for Legal Education, providing scholarships to underprivileged students interested in corporate law. It gave me purpose seeing Adam's legacy continue in young lawyers' careers. Standing in that garden, I reflected on everything Adam had taught me, not just during our years together, but even after he was gone. His foresight in preparing those documents had protected me at my most vulnerable. His love continued to shield me even in his absence. Sometimes the most painful betrayals force us to find strength we never knew we had. Adam couldn't have known what would happen after he was gone, but somehow he'd prepared me to face it, and in that way, his love protects me still.